For Lord Aron. For my father, the king. Feel my wrath. Justice has come. Betrayer of the light. Of course. For my father, the king. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. For Lord Aron. Foul name. Betrayer of the light. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. For Lord Aron. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. Of course.
First blood.
Of course. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. Of course. A sound plan. Justice has come. For honor. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. Of course. For Lord Aron. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan.
Our veterans'
Of
town
course.
is under attack.
Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. Feel my wrath. Certainly. For my father, the king. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. Foul name. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan.
Kill, double kill.
Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. For my father, the king. Justice has come. You are past redemption. I'm here to help. Justice has come. You are past redemption. Feel my wrath. Foul name.
No, 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 not like that. Let me do it.
I stand for the light. A sound plan. A sound plan. Justice shall be. For Lord
Our
Aron.
veterans' town
For
is under
honor.
attack.
Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. Certainly. Betrayer of the light. For my father, the king. A sound plan. Foul name. Certainly. Betrayer of the light. Justice has come. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan.
Town is under attack.
For my father, the king. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Justice is coming. Feel my wrath. Of course. Certainly. Of course. Betrayer of light. Certainly. Justice has come. For honor. Certainly. Of course. You are past redemption. For honor. Of course. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly. I'm here to help.
Killing
For honor.
spree.
Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Betrayer of the light. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Justice shall be done. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Certainly. A sound
Our
plan.
brethren's town is
Of
under
course.
attack.
A sound plan. Certainly. Of course. Foul knave. Feel my wrath. Foul knave. I'm here to help. For my father, the king.
Dominating.
The light is my strength. A sound plan. Feel my wrath. For my father, the king. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Certainly. You are past redemption. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan.
Our forces are under attack.
I stand for the light.
Dominating.
I'm here to help. For my father, the king. You are past redemption. Justice has come. For my father, the king.
Mega kill.
Light is my strength. Foul knave. For honor.
Unstoppable.
Justice shall be done. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. For honor. For my father, the king. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan.
Wicked sick.
I'm here to help. Of course.
Betrayer of the light. Our brethren's town is
For
under
honor.
attack.
Certainly.
You are past redemption. Betrayer of the light.
For honor. Of course. Feel my wrath. Certainly.
Betrayer of the light.
Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound. Feel my wrath. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. For my father, the king. Of course. For honor. Of course. Certainly. Of course.
You're interrupting my calculations.
Is there danger? Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly.
Our brethren's
For
town
honor.
is under attack.
Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. A sound plan. For my father, the king. Justice has come. You are past redemption. For my father, the king. You are past
Our
redemption.
brethren's town is under attack. Betrayer of the light.
You are past redemption. Certainly. Of course. Certainly.
Betrayer of the light.
A sound for honor. Certainly. A sound of course. For honor. Certainly. For
Our
honor.
brethren's town is
Certainly.
under attack.
Killing spree.
Sound plan. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan.
Our
What is
forces
your
are
wish?
under attack.
I'm here to help. Of course. For my father, the king. Certainly. Of course.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
You are past redemption. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. For my father, the king. I stand for the light. Foul knave. For my father, the king. Justice has come. Foul knave. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. I'm here to help. You are past redemption. Feel my wrath.
Dominating.
Certainly. Justice has come. You are past redemption. Of course. For my father, the king. Justice has come. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. Feel my wrath. You are past redemption.
Under attack.
Feel my wrath. Foul knave. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
Certainly. Of course. Light is my strength. A sound plan.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
I'm here to help. For honor. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. come. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor.
Betrayer of the light. You are past redemption.
Certainly. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Is there danger? Of course. I stand for the light.
Justice has come.
For my father, the king.
Our brethren's town is under attack.
I'm here to help.
You are past redemption.
For my father, the king.
Betrayer of the light.
Certainly.
Justice has come.
For honor.
Feel my wrath.
A sound plan.
You are past redemption. Feel my wrath. Justice has come. Betrayer of the light.
Foul name. For my father, the king. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. Foul name. A sound plan. Feel my wrath. Certainly. For
Our
honor.
brethren's
A
town is
sound
under
plan.
attack. You are past redemption.
Certainly. Feel my wrath. Father.
Betrayer of the light.
A sound plan. Is someone injured?
I am ready.
More gold is required.
The light is my strength. Certainly. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. I stand for the light.
Double kill.
Of course.
You are past redemption.
For honor. A sound plan.
Mega kill.
For honor. Certainly. For honor. For Lord Oran. Of course. For honor. Of course. For honor. Of course. Certainly.
Justice.
For my father. Sound. For honor.
Betrayer of the light. Justice.
A sound. For my father, the king. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. For honor. Certainly. Of course. For honor.
No, 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 not like that. Let me do it.
Light is my strength.
You are past redemption.
Foul name.
You are past redemption.
Of course.
Justice has come.
Sound plan. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan. sound plan. Of course. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Feel my wrath. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. For my father, the king. Feel my wrath. Certainly. For my father, the king. For honor. Foul hate. Of course. For honor. You are past that. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. Betrayer of the light. Foul knave. Betrayer of the light. Justice has come. You are past redemption. For my father, the king. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. Justice has come. Betrayer of the light. Certainly. Feel my wrath. You are past redemption. Feel my wrath. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. You are past redemption. Betrayer of the light. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Justice shall come. Foul knave. A sound plan. Of course. Of course. A sound plan. Light is my strength. For honor. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Feel my wrath. Of course. Betrayer of the light. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. Feel my wrath. Certainly.
Yes, me lord.
Stand for the light. For honor. Foul knave. Justice shall be done. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. For honor. Certainly. Of course. For honor. Of course. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. Feel my wrath. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. Certainly. For honor. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. Foul knave. Is there danger?
Betrayer of the light.
For my father the king. Foul knave. Feel my wrath. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. Foul knave.
Betrayer of the light.
Foul knave.
Justice has come.
Foul knave. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. Justice has come.
Our forces are under attack.
The light. Foul knave. For my father the king. For my father the king.
Dominating.
For honor. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. Of course, justice shall be done. For honor. A sound plan. Is there danger? The light is my strength. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. Justice has come. You are For my father, the king. Feel my wrath, foul knave. For my father, the king. Justice has come. Foul knave. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. Justice has come. Betrayal of the light. You will have redemption. Justice shall be done. Justice has come. The light is my strength. Foul knave. Feel my wrath. For my father, the king. Betrayer of the light. Foul knave. You are past redemption. For my father, the king. Foul knave. Of course. Certainly.
Where shall my blood be
Justice
spilled?
shall be done. A sound plan. For honor. Of course. For honor. Of course. Justice has come. Betrayer of the light. A sound plan. Of course. The light is my strength. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan.
Killing spree.
Justice shall be done. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. You are past redemption. For my father, the king. For honor. A sound plan. Certainly. Foul knave. For my father, the king. Justice has come. Betrayer of the light. A sound plan. For honor. Feel my wrath. For my father, the king.
Killing spree.
Foul knave. Feel my wrath. Betrayer of the light. For my father, the king. Feel my wrath. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. For honor. Of course.
Dominating.
For honor.
I bow to
Is there
your
danger?
will. Kill. Dominating. Kill.
For honor. Of course. Certainly. For honor. A sound. Sound. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Of course. Betrayer of the light. Certainly. Feel my wrath. You are past redemption. Foul knave. Betrayer of the light. Justice. For my father. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. Justice has come. Betrayer of the light. Foul knave. Feel my wrath.
Betrayer of the light.
Of course.
You are past.
For honor.
Feel my wrath. You are past. Feel my wrath.
Certainly. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. For honor. A sound plan. Of course.
Betrayer of the light. Feel my wrath.
For my father, the king.
Justice has come.
Foul name. For my father, the king.
Betrayer of the light.
For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. I'm here to help.
Where shall my blood
The light is my
spill?
strength. A sound. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly. For Lord Oran.
Mega kill. Unstoppable.
Of course.
Feel my wrath.
A sound plan.
Betrayer of the light.
For my father, the king.
You are past redemption. Justice has come.
Foul name. For my father, the king.
Feel my wrath.
For honor. Certainly. A sound plan.
You are past redemption.
Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan.
Betrayer of the light.
For my father, the king. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan.
Our forces are under attack.
The light is my strength. For honor. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. Certainly.
Betrayer of the light.
Justice shall be done. For honor.
Justice has come.
Foul name. For my father, the king. A sound plan. Certainly. Of course. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. Of course. A sound plan. For honor. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. Of course. Certainly. For honor. Certainly. For honor. Of course. For honor. Of course. Certainly. A sound plan. Certainly. A sound plan. For honor. A sound plan. For honor. Of course.
Double kill.
Of course.
Triple kill. Dominant. Ultra kill.
Sound plan. For honor. Of course. For honor. For Lord Oran. Certainly. Betrayer of the light. A sound plan. For honor.
Rampage.
Foul. Of course. For honor. You are past. Certainly. A sound plan.
Town is under attack.